congratulations on the new contract. What did you do to deserve it?
Well, thanks very much. It's it's an extension that we agreed to actually a little while ago, and obviously we had some business to take care of with some of my staff, and haven't really been one to announce the terms of those. But I think over the course of time here, I think we've built an organization that has tried to compete for the Stanley Cup over the last couple of years, and again, I think that there's obviously lots of work to do here, continue to move forward and try and push this forward, and I'm just very fortunate that I have the opportunity to and the confidence from ownership to move that forward.
Players have called this season embarrassing and wasted. Your captain says it feels like you're back at square one. How much responsibility do you take for that?
Oh, certainly. Again, when you put the roster together and you're the person in the organization that makes a great deal of decisions you take, it weighs on you immensely. I think that we're going through a process right now in the dressing room there with the players, and the exit meetings, I think, are extremely important in this environment, in this situation, to ask those questions. I think, as equally disappointed as everyone is right now, I think the euphoria at the start of the season was very high. I think that this group, had a lot of expectations in itself, and with some of the moves that we made over the summer, I think there was a tremendous amount of excitement. So, that level of high is certainly, when you're at this point here right now, not competing in the playoffs, is met with an equal level of low.
What can you tell us about the state of the coaching staff now after yesterday?
So I met, late in the evening after, everything had kind of died down. I met with all the coaches. So I informed them that we're going to be conducting a full-scale interview process for a new head coach. And so I met with each of them individually. I met with Dave and told him that as well, and said to him if he wanted to be part of that formal search, that he had earned that opportunity. So we will grant him a formal interview process in that regard. I met with all the assistant coaches as well and told them that again, we're going to go through this process, and that there's a chance that they're part of that process moving forward when we finally select a head coach, but there's also a chance that it might not be there.
Can you give a timeline on how quickly you'd like to go through this? Because I don't imagine you want to leave them kind of twisting in the wind, right?
So haven't really gone, through this process, obviously, for a while from the coaching perspective. It's, and again, we're going to get through the exit process here today. There's still, going to be some meetings with, with the coaches as well, about the exit meetings that we are having with, with the players, just to put closure to some of those situations. And then, we'll look at the different possibilities. It's hard sometimes to put a time frame on it, because some guys you might want to interview could be in the assistant coaches' sides in organizations that run deep in the playoffs. So we'll turn our attention to that here in short order, and I'm not sure exactly when we'll begin that process, but start compiling names and situations to deal with.
Shifley spoke yesterday candidly about wanting to hear about a vision of this club. He obviously he said he loved Winnipeg, but isn't sure about his future here. What did you hear in that, and what is the vision for this?
Well, I heard a lot of, obviously a lot of passion, and I've heard a lot of passion from a lot of different guys in many different situations. It wasn't just, listening to him speak. I've listened and heard, obviously through, some of the conversations that you have had with the players over the past week, but also getting a chance to speak to, Nick. I don't think I've gotten through half of the guys yet, but through a lot of the guys and their thoughts and their meanings. Certainly with respect to Mark, he is a talented player. He's in the prime of his career. He is all those things that he said he is, and he's a Winnipeg Jet, and he wants to win. And as an organization, our vision is we're going to have to take a little bit of a reassessment here to see where some of the things are at. But our goal is to win the Stanley Cup. We've been a cap team. We've been committed to that. We've signed guys long term. Obviously, you wish the cap maybe was a little bit more in our favor with respect to over the last couple of years, because we've probably been able to keep a few guys that have become casualties of those things as well. But that's the nature of the pandemic, with the cap being flat. Some of maybe the legacy contracts didn't allow us to foreshadow where maybe we ran out of money, so to speak, to keep some other guys. So that vision hasn't changed. From a standpoint of wanting to win a Stanley Cup, we're just going to have to come at it and look at it from a little bit of a different perspective after a setback year like this.
For clarity's sake, is Mark one of the people you have talked to?
No, I haven't.
Okay. And in terms of the head coach, have you thought at all about what the template is for the successful candidate? Like, what kind of a coach do you think would be the best fit?
Yeah, I think we're going to be open-minded, but I want to also have different conversations with the players here. These exit meetings have probably taken a lot longer this year than they have in normal years past. We're probably running about an hour and a half behind, and we've only gotten through half of the guys here. Again, as far as standing up here today and proclaiming, what type of coach or anything like that, I want to let the guys speak to me. I want to let my staff speak to me, and I want to, take some time to reflect and obviously, take a look at who's out there.
Just to clarify on Mark, he mentioned talking to his agent. Dave Lowry said yesterday that he has a decision to make. He's obviously under contract for 2 more years. Can you provide some insight into has he asked for a trade?
Yeah, no, he hasn't asked for a trade. I'll have a conversation with him during the exit meeting here, and I guess, find some clarity.
It sounds like a lot of the comments we've heard in the last while, whether it's the young stars, the veterans, Paul Stastny yesterday, they go beyond frustration of not winning and into sort of criticism about the attitude that some members of the team may have, talking about individuals and individual success over team success. And I mean, that sounds substantial to us, certainly. What can you say to that? And honestly, what is your role in that and changing that? Because it sounds like there's quite a substantial problem there.
Well, again, I think that, when you go through an emotional time like these players have, like the emotional commitment that they have given, that they were gearing up for, and then the emotional letdown that we have right now when we didn't achieve it. That's why you hear a lot of those words. I think that you've heard come out of the guys' mouths, like they're disappointed. They're they wanted more. They feel let down. They feel they let themselves down. Some guys may feel others let them down. Like, that's the raw emotion that's in there, and those are the type of emotions that are in a dressing room. That's why, like, sometimes in organizations, you see guys fighting on the ice and stuff like that. Like, they care, and so some guys are have different ways of expressing it. And from a standpoint of a team winning, you need everybody on that same page. And it's an elusive thing sometimes, and sometimes it just clicks. And those kind of chemistries are what you try to build over the course of the season, and ultimately that's why you see some teams hit their stride. We're talking. I had an opportunity to talk to Sanford in his exit here, and we talked about the fact you won a Stanley Cup, and you had a very interesting year that year with respect to being virtually in last place, at Christmas time, to going on and win the cup. And you said, well, what was that about? What happened? And you kind of sat there, and it's like, it's hard to put into words. It just, all of a sudden, things just started to fall into place. Guys that, maybe, weren't clicking before, all of a sudden, as it went on, it started to click. So that's, that's part of being a team. That's why you have to play the 82 games, and that's why you can't win anything on paper. It has to, it has to be done on the ice, and it starts, within the room.
Kevin, doesn't it seem like it's more than just, your typical and your frustration? Like, I know that players are saying that, they're disappointed and everything, but Paul Stastny yesterday said players have to have more respect for each other in that room. That seems more than just the disappointment of not being able to make it into the postseason.
So I think, when you come into seasons, everyone's goals are to make the playoffs. Paul, your first question to me all the time, is this going to be a playoff team? You guys going to make the playoffs? You want to put guys on record. They want to be on record to say this is a playoff team. Well, I don't think there's one guy in that room that didn't think it was going to be a playoff team. I think, the level of disappointment is because, we didn't even get beyond that. We didn't, so I think it goes back to the way I answered things earlier. Like, like, there's some teams, they can say they're going to make the playoffs, and there's no shot that they're going to make it. They got, obviously you're in that evolution of your franchise where I shouldn't say no shot. Everyone's got a shot, because again, there's strange things that happen. But this group here, I think, genuinely felt that there was supposed to be more, and I think that's why you get the valley of the valleys of lows that we have here right now.
When you heard Mark talk yesterday, kind of a lot of individual, right? What's going to be best for me? What's going to be moving forward? He wears an A on this team. But you saw over the year, Blake, I mean, it's a burden to be the captain, but it seemed like it was weighing on him extra. He had a head coach leave because his message wouldn't get through. I'm wondering if there needs to be an internal look at the leadership group within this club and whether or not you'd be willing to go to a different voice than maybe the leaders you have now.
Well, I think, again, there's going to be lots of conversations amongst, whether it's the leadership group, whether it's, the other players. There's going to be, lots of conversations internally. And just because I got an extension, there's going to be lots of conversations between the ownership and myself and asking, where things went. I think there's lots of questions that everyone's going to want answered. What the course of action moving forward is going to be. That's what we need to take the time here to figure out and make those hard decisions in that regard.
Where do discussions with Pierre-Luc Dubois sit on that in the GM's job jar?
Very high. Obviously, did have a chance to chat with PL this morning already. So we had a good, candid, conversation. Last year was such a weird year for him. We really didn't even get a chance to sit down with each other until the, exits last year. So it was interesting and refreshing to get his perspective on things this year after having, one full year with the organization in a more normal setting. Again, he knows squarely where we stand, with respect to what we think about him and what we'd like to accomplish. And the business side of the game will have to take care of itself. This goes back to a lot of different things. The business side of the hockey is in a different state right now with respect to the flat cap and stuff like that, and probably is going to increase over a period of time. So trying to have negotiations with players over short term versus long term and those type of things, there's lots of things that come into play.
He indicated it would be not a short process. Was that kind of the gist of your converssion with him too, then, that it would take some time?
Yeah,
to
I assume so. The process in situations like this is, he's an ARB eligible player, so there's some, thought process and timeline, in those kind of regards. But, we got a lot of work to do.
Expect to be a cap ceiling team again next year?
Yeah, as we sit here right now, that's, the projections, that's, you look at the guys we have signed, you look at, those type of situations. The ownership is fully committed, from that standpoint. We don't have to deal with an LTI situation, which will make the summer a much easier type of situation from a planning perspective, which again, we spent a lot of time last year trying to maneuver and make sure that we didn't waste any cap space because of that.
Defense Corps was a clear objective last year. You've kind of gone from a shortage to a surplus. I mean, what kind of challenges does that present as you get ready for that roster construction?
Yeah, again, we'll sit back and look at a lot of different things, with respect to filling different holes and how we're going to do that moving forward, and what combinations worked, what combinations didn't. Not necessarily combinations on defense, but I just mean with respect to filling out the roster. We've got some young guys that. It's just so unfortunate that a guy like Cole Perfetti, had to deal with an injury during a time when, guys like, Mark Scheifele are injured. That would have been a prime role for him to, take more of a, get his feet wet, so to speak. But those are things that you just have to deal with. I thought Dylan Sandberg, came in and really showed that he's made some good development, over a course of a period of time. I thought Ville Heinola, did the same thing when he had his opportunity to come in here. So we do have a lot of good, pieces. Some are veterans, some are young, and that's a good thing to have.
Obviously, ownership's not up here speaking, but I just wonder, as the GM, and your focus is primarily, of course, the on-ice product, but is there extra pressure given, the team just didn't have a sellout this year? There's maybe some some anger amongst some in the fan base. Is there extra pressure, say, from even higher up to kind of get this right and get things back on track?
Well, there's lots of people that really deeply care about the fans and the city of Winnipeg, and certainly we know we have a responsibility to to this organization to put its best feet forward. So there's lots of COVID, I think, was a tough situation for the business side to have to deal with. The vaccination side of things, clearly put a divide line on several people, and the organization had to make a tough decision right from the get-go that they knew that it was going to potentially alienate 1,000 people from that standpoint. So they care, and the business side is certainly something that I care about, and I care about the fans. There's not a day that goes by that you don't feel that responsibility to the city of Winnipeg and the great fans that we have, and they make a difference, like not having them in the building. You talk to a lot of those guys, a lot of the players that, it's not the same, and when we would go, on the road and there'd be, fans, and we'd come home and we're still at maybe, zero capacity or 50%, it weighed on those guys mentally, like it's a tough, tough transition.
Kevin, not a lot of GMs stay with the same team as long as you have without like deep championship runs or titles. How do you view why you have this opportunity?
Well, again, I think that these guys, we've built a strong core that was a core that everyone felt could compete. We've had to make changes. We've had changes made. We've had Dustin Byfuglien retire. We had the different situations where we've had to move on from different guys from the cap. But we've also had situations where you've had guys like like Lowry that could have went to free agency that wanted to be a part of this and stay, like Pionk that could have went to basically got his way to free agency and chose to sign a contract that we could fit in the cap. Like there's lots of good things that we've been able to accomplish, and we've been a team that has pushed, and unfortunately we hit a roadblock here right now, and so we're going to have to find a different way to to overcome that.
What are some of the challenges as a manager when you have a bunch of personal bests or career highs, but the sum total was not greater, or you weren't as good as the sum of your parts, essentially? What are the challenges as a manager in terms of roster construction on that front?
Well, again, I think it goes back to maybe looking at some of the combinations that I was talking about and seeing, do you need to construct things differently? Do you need to bring some different types of players in? Do you need some, who are your young guys that we have, like, do they fill this void or don't they fill this void? Like, those are the type of things that, again, you're trying to create a team, but there's personal bests. There's no question that, you need the players competing, and a guy like, KC, he obviously it was just an exciting time for him, and someone that I hope truly gets, rewarded, with a Lady Byng for the type of player that, that he plays and exemplifies on and off the ice. And so there are positives. Those are things that, from an organization, you want to make sure that, you take note of. But, and there's growth, so like, some of these guys that did achieve their personal best, it's been growth year over year over year, and that's what you're looking for as well. Is who's that next guy in the organization, or that can potentially grow and play into to a role. Like Morgan Barron is a player that, again, we were excited to see come in and compete and show different glimpses of what he's going to bring. Does that give us a different element that maybe we didn't have now? So those are things that we're going to assess going forward here as part of the whole evaluation process.
From that perspective then, if a rival GM calls you, Kevin, would it be reasonable to suggest there's a list of names that kind of are non-conversation starters from your position?
Sure. There's always guys that are going to be extremely hard for you to ever talk about, moving when a GM calls. But GMs call all the time. GMs call, and I call, other guys all the time. You're not doing your job if you don't maybe sometimes ask the crazy question, because you just never know.
Kevin, just
Sort of a two-parter on Paul Maurice. One, to clarify the record. I've heard everything from, Paul Maurice quit on this team to Paul Maurice quit before he was going to get fired. Can you just clarify again the circumstances of his departure? Were you in the process of replacing him if he doesn't leave?
Yeah, no. He resigned at the time, and for his personal reasons, and he spoke, to you guys. There's really, I guess, not much else after that. Haven't had a heck of a lot of conversations, or not conversations, dialogue with them or anything like that. We've exchanged text messages on a couple of different fronts, but outside of that, it's it was a personal thing with him.
And then just the follow-up is, now that the season's over, what tangible impact do you believe that, not just the coaching change itself, but the way that played out? How do you think that impacted this group?
Yeah, I don't know that you can measure it, because again, it's hard to measure those kind of things when they kind of happen, so sudden. But I do think it had an effect, and I think it had effect on some players more than others. And I think some players, it didn't bother at all. And in fact, in some of the exit meetings that I've had, we've asked some of those kind of questions, and one player frankly said, like, it didn't matter to me one bit. I just go about doing my business and get prepared to play, and I play. So where I'm sure we're going to have some other guys, that it comes up where it deeply affected them.
Kevin, there's a clarification. Have any of your coaches been retained?
So I had a conversation with Wade Flaherty that said that looking at negotiating with him, he's in the last year of his deal. So I can't say I've got a deal signed with him, but I did have a conversation that I would be offering him something.
Kevin, when you look at other teams, let's say Carolina,
but I haven't fired anybody either. It's
They're at the end of their deals,
and we've had conversations, like I say, with them. They know we're going to go through a full search, and they understand that what that could mean either way.
Kevin, when you look at other teams like Carolina, it's clear that they're a very good defensive team, puck possession. Look at Tampa, high-powered offense, also defensive, and they plucked certain players that they needed to fit a certain mold for their team. What do you want your team to look like on the ice? Like, what is not necessarily the vision of the franchise, but the team on the ice? Is it because you have offensive players? Defense has been a clear issue here in terms of just defending. I mean, what does this team need to look like to be a championship team?
Yeah, well, I think this team, needs to understand, that they have to play a certain way, and it's not just this team. I think every team, you need talent to win in this league, and you need that talent to be elite. Whether it's from the net, on defense, at forward, it has to be elite. But you need also that talent and those group of guys to understand that you got to play a certain way, and sometimes it's not fun. And some nights it's more fun than others, but more often than not you're going to be on the successful side of it. We do need to find a way to play better defensively, whether it's systemic, whether it's mindset, whether it's because if you look at our most successful periods of time, whether it was last year, beating Edmonton, obviously, Helly played fantastic, but the group of guys, found a way to check properly, to do all those things, to play those tight games. When we went to the conference finals, same thing. And I think, it's interesting. I think that's why playoff hockey is so fun for these guys, and for hockey players in general. That's what they relish to play playoff hockey, because they know that they have to be dialed in. They know that level of focus, and they know that there's that that end result. Over an 82 game season, again, there's ebbs and flows. There's travel. There's schedule, there's sickness, there's all those kind of things that creep in. But when you get into the playoffs, and that's why it is the funnest time of the year, you're dialed in, you're focused, you know that the goal is to win 4 games, and then the next 4, and then the next 4, and I think that's what drives them, and goes back to that's what is so I think why they're so disappointed right now.
You need a certain culture to be successful. And players have been questioning that culture. How did that happen? Because if you want to fix it, you probably need to know how it got here.
Yeah, it's certainly again, culture is a very broad, word that is used, a lot. I think that, a culture isn't something that you just say, aha, that's what I want. A culture comes with, having a core set of beliefs and then believing in the beliefs and then seeing the results that you feel you want from doing those little things. So culture just doesn't happen overnight. A culture is a series of foundational pieces that everyone uniformly believes in and can grow from and see tangible results. So that's what we need to get to. We need to find, again, get back to that foundational root and we. As an organization, I think, we have lots of those in place, and we just, need to continue to, to find a way to do them and find those results so to reinforce them.
After 11 years, shouldn't that be firmly in place by now?
Well, I think, every year is different. It's not the same players in there each and every year. I think there's foundational things in place. But again, not one team wins the cup every single year. And 2 weeks from now, there's going to be, 8 more teams that are going to be standing here, very, very disappointed because they felt they should go farther than the first round. And then there's going to be 4 more that even feel profoundly more because they got that close. And then there's going to be one that's just going to be really, really, really upset because they got that close. That doesn't mean that their culture is wrong. Doesn't mean that they're, all the work that they've put in, over the course of the year. It's a tough game to win in, and it's a tough league to win in. Over half the teams now don't make the playoffs. Half the teams are standing here, the day after the season ends and answering the tough questions.
Kevin, there's a
Only
lot of
one. All those teams will be disappointed. There's only one right now whose star players are talking about folks playing individually. Like the scale of this certainly seems different. When you talk about culture needing to be built up through several years, presumably it also decays through several years as well. And there's been some tough disappointments in the last couple of years. You mentioned core pieces being in place as well. So, just to go back to that, what would you say to the fact that this is the only team that is saying to folks like us very publicly that there are too many people pulling on the individual road?
Well, I think it's one thing. It's refreshing that players are saying things to you. I think that's something that, again, all too often in these exit meetings that we go through, it comes to what are your summer plans and, are you healthy and, those kind of things. But, the fact that players are saying that shows that they care, shows that they had a level of expectation. And, I think, that's the first point that you have to, if you're going to be afraid to say it, it's not going to help, try and change that. And, if that's what they truly believe, then it's also incumbent upon them, if they're back and if some guys are free agents. And certainly, again, we had a conversation with Stas. We'd love to have Stas back. We'll see how that, plays out with his body and wanting to play and those kind of things. But the fact that guys are open to have those kind of, conversations, that's refreshing.
This is it, guys.
Just, when the Jenner and Block report came out before, you'd mentioned your commitment to, listening to survivors and wanting to move forward. I know the organization has done those things. I'm just wondering, it's been 6 months now, what kind of progress you personally made since that press conference?
Sure. So, again, we're very proud that, I think we're the only organization that has gone through the whole respect in the workplace training. We from top to bottom, whether it's business side and throughout, the Jets and the Moose organizations, I think that, when you go through those kind of programs and take it to heart and talk to some people who have gone through the programs with you, you start to learn, you start to understand. I think there's a level of understanding that can only come from, going through, those kind of processes and talking. I know as an organization, there's a commitment level to, to want to bring awareness to this. And I know that they've talked about adding different components, talked with Sheldon and the group about adding different components of that, program into the Project 11 and getting it into the schools and getting it, for understanding that, an awareness, so to speak. And I know a player like Adam Lowry is lending his voice and his stature to the Toba Center. So, I think that, again, through tragic situations, the only way that you can grow is to learn and to talk and to discuss and to have those difficult things, but then offer your assistance.